The whole packet?
No, the packet is just my supporting documentation. I like to be prepared.
You know, I was in court this past week and a guy represented himself. And, you know, for many years, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And then I realized how much paperwork it was. And I don't like writing paperwork.
I actually,
No, there it is.
Well, there is, it's on a delay, but she'll mute it so we can't hear it.
But the audio is clear.
It is, really clear, yeah.
Where's the
That's good.
microphone?
I know. Wow. Okay.
But I'm glad you gave me that info, because I could have gone deep into a deep dive, and I
they
did.
took out all the screens and put in my.
See who we got. We just have Hillary, Katie, Mindy, Matthew.
Mindy's there.
3, 4, 5. We got 5.
When I reported, I used it.
Yes.
Lori, Katie,
Yes,
Matthew, and
yeah.
I'm the twosy.
Spots.
I know Bert's been,
I did that.
You losing weight?
I'm trying. They opened a brand new
Very,
gym in our building.
very noticeable. I was like, wait a minute. What? And you got new glasses. See?
Okay, hi, everybody. So we're gonna wait a few minutes. We have 2, 4, only 5 people. And we need to have 6 for a quorum, 7 for a quorum for all the cases where there's recusals. So, and I know Burr is gonna be joining us because he has been sending me, can you see if I'm missing somebody at the top?
Lori, Caitlin, Matthew,
Okay.
Mindy, and Katie.
Can you do a view of everybody showing at the same time? Do you see the view up in the right-hand corner? Yeah. Gallery, yeah. Perfect, okay, good.
Do you know what this?
What that is? I think we're joining us, we're waiting in lobby. We might have to see who the
That's
guest
probably
is.
public, yes.
It shouldn't because they shouldn't have that information, but not Teams. That little camera at the bottom, the blue one. Yeah. Click on that, see. We should, I guess just ignore it because we shouldn't have an issue.
Set up for people to be in a waiting room.
Mm-mm. No,
There shouldn't even be a link.
there isn't, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will you put that on the bigger box so it covers the whole TV screen? I don't know if that.
Yes,
Next to the X.
there we go.
Okay. So I'm gonna text and see where everybody is. Okay, let's on here. It says I'm in the waiting room. So Bert's in the waiting room, so we need to let Bert in.
On actual Zoom?
Yeah,
So at what point does this?
Go to the-
active?
go to the, down to the camera on the bottom.
Never clicks the button.
Oh, on there.
Click on
Yeah,
participants.
how do we let them in?
Just click on participants. All the-
She did. Send him another invite. I don't know why he's in the waiting room. Just send him another invite.
Who is it?
Bert.
That's Sword.
Oh, yeah.
Or
It should just, well, WebEx always, it just came up, so I'm not sure.
wait, but everything I do on here is gonna be on the stream.
I'll email him.
Are we recording?
At what point does the audio go out when we come into the room?
When it turns off, you mean?
We come into the room and apparently Tracy said the other board members can pick up the audio that is coming from this room.
Like when you go out there, you mean?
No, when we entered,
Yeah, I mean, there's speakers everywhere.
but it goes out immediately.
We heard everything, Gerard.
Thank you.
Okay,
I appreciate
I
it.
wasn't sure what you were.
You did the answer.
Or do they automatically turn on?
Maybe turn on like.
I'm glad I stayed on point today.
It
The sound is very good.
is.
I didn't know.
So I was told.
Yeah, as soon as I start the Zoom, that's when all the speakers are.
Gotcha.
So it's Zoom YouTube.
Well, it's Zoom, but then we're streaming it to YouTube. So it's primarily on Zoom. But anybody that goes on YouTube can watch us
That was the answer right there.
But when is that?
right now.
Okay,
Yeah,
so if they're
like-
on YouTube, they can see
Yeah,
us
if
too.
you go to, well, I don't have, no, like, this is YouTube, so anybody can be watching this.
So do we want to stream until the board meeting starts? Or is it possible?
I don't know. I mean, today's just the first one, so
That's fine.
she just told me to
It's grown
stream
pains
it,
right
and
now.
she told me to record it and stream it, so.
So, and I forwarded the link. So hopefully, so we apologize for the delay. This is our first experience with trying YouTube, although problem is with Zoom, not, oh, there goes Bert. Okay, yeah.
There he is.
So we have 8. We have 8 people. Yeah, so we can get started. Too. Let me do roll call.
Oh, I was just waiting for you to give me to go ahead.
Oh, no, I said we can get started.
Oh, okay. I call the Sex Offender Registration Review Board meeting for November 10th, 2022 to order. I want to welcome all of our board members and all of our guests. Our purpose and mission is protecting Georgia's children and communities at large by identifying convicted sexual offenders that present the greatest risk of sexual reoffending. It is the board's responsibility to determine the likelihood that a sexual offender will engage in another crime against a victim who is a minor or a dangerous sexual offense. Assessments will be used by SORB to determine the risk level of the offenders. Offenders will be classified as level 1, level 2, or sexually dangerous predator. Tracy, would you give us a roll call?
Yes, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do a roll call. Mindy Ackerman,
Present.
Gerardo Moore,
Here.
Matthew Conley,
Here.
Katie Gropper,
Here.
Caitlin Morrell,
Here.
Frank Mullis,
Present.
Bert Reeves,
Here.
Lori Rozier,
Here.
Ezell Brown, Jerry Bruce, Mandy Ballinger. Okay, so those 3 are not here. I know Sheriff Brown is trying to get connected, but we can start because we do have a
Jerry
quorum.
Bruce just logged on.
Oh, Jerry. Hi, Jerry Bruce, doing check-ins. How are you? Okay, so we have Jerry. Okay.
Hey, I'm
we're-
sorry about that. I'm driving and I couldn't get on didn't have enough signal to get on.
That's okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, we will now look at the adoption of the minutes for approval for the September 9th, 2022 meeting. Is there any questions regarding the minutes? Do I hear a motion that we approve the minutes from September 9th, 2022?
So we'll,
Second.
There's a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We have reports of officers and standing committees. It looks like it's inactive. Tracy, is there anything to that?
So I can probably just share a little bit about when it comes, because I think this is usually, we usually have a legislative committee. So I can just share a little bit. The Capitol did contact me about any changes that we wanted to make that were minor changes. So some changes that we've kind of had in process on another bill that are very simplistic changes that there would not be any argument for, such as changing our name from the Sex Offender Registration Review Board to the Sex Offender Risk Review Board is an example of things that I presented to the governor's office. And which it keeps us with SOAR, but it changes registration to risk, which makes a lot more sense. And we get a million calls and emails about the registry. So hopefully they'll reduce that. And then things that I know that I presented to the Capitol before, again, that was attached to another bill that defense attorneys and, or I think everybody else is in support of, such as giving offenders a longer period of time, which right now they have 60 days to submit for reevaluation. It'll double that time, 120 days, because a lot of them want to give updated information, which I think is appropriate. And that's just another example. Also, we have the 10-year rule that 10 years post classification, they can request reevaluation. Right now it's just policy. And one of the issues when we go to judicial review is that it is only policy versus law. So we have that. So I presented those things to the Capitol and hopefully that will be something simple for them to make adjustments to. And then Mandy Ballinger is working on adding additional levels. I've submitted information to her. And I've spoken about this before. 3 levels, I think, is too huge of pots to put everybody in, and it makes things a little more complicated. And so based on the Stable 2007, in addition to the static 99, if you were to merge those, they actually have, the researchers have created 5 different categories. Now it's not levels like we think of them, but it's very much similar, and that's what we go by with the research. So 5 categories versus 3, I think will be much more beneficial. And so Mandy is working on that. And I've not heard from her yet. I know she said she's working on it. So hopefully I'll talk to her after Thanksgiving.
Hey, any questions? Right, any unfinished business? All right, any new business, Tracy?
That would be it. That would be.
Okay, so this past couple weeks ago, Mindy was there at ATSA as well. There was a lot of information given on the registry and registrations that's going on around the country. A lot of new updates that are coming in for risk and review and so forth. And Tracy didn't go. And what I really like about Tracy is she is very frugal with our budget. And but I think it's important for Tracy and some of the staff to attend no matter where it is. I just think that that's very important for us to get information on the latest research that's going on. And it's very important to us for the safety of the community at large, especially for the state. So I want to recommend to the board that it becomes mandatory for Tracy and whoever she decides to go to the national training or any other trainings that she deems necessary to help us out, and especially with the state. So I want to present that recommendation to the board for discussion.
I totally agree that Tracy needs to be there. That it's not only good for the staff and good for what Tracy's doing for us, but I think the feedback that we get and the information that we get when we have our meetings, if there's anything new that we need to be apprised of as board members, it can only serve us well moving forward.
I second that.
I agree as well.
Mindy, would you like to just mention some of the things that you picked up at ATSA that would probably be good as well?
Well, Frank, I think you pretty much said it all, but I definitely agree. And honestly, it really would just give our board, and not only our board, but SORB staff just more credibility and accountability when they're receiving that training, from our international conference and staying up with the latest, assessments and research, because there's always, it seems, something new going on. At least every time I go, there's new information, as you said, Frank. I think you pretty much covered it, but I definitely support it.
So what I would imagine is adding this to our bylaws, and then I'll put that in there, and then the board would review that and then vote on that. I know this year, since it was in LA, it's extremely expensive to go to those types of locations. Just the flights alone are very expensive. And so that was one of the issues. But I think that if we have at least, if you're saying at least for me to go, and then if I can add people depending on our funding, that'd be great. I know next year's in Colorado, Frank told me.
It's Aurora, Colorado, so it's Denver, basically.
So I'm hoping to maybe put in for me to present actually on SORB and how we function, because I have had several states contact me due to their issues around the rights of their offender, because in a lot of states they cannot come off the registry, whereas Georgia, we do have avenues for that. And so they asked me kind of how we do things. So I'm hoping maybe, and Frank had recommended this, so I'm going to put in to present when we go to Colorado and hopefully give them some information. And of course, anything I can learn from other states as well.
And that will reduce fees too.
And that will reduce fees, yes. Absolutely. So, okay, so I will put together for the bylaws and then send that out to y'all.
So we need to do a motion on that.
I don't think you do, just because I'll put in the bylaws,
Okay.
then you'd all would vote at that time.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you, everybody, for that. So we'll have your report now.
okay, so I just want to update everybody on the retreat. Finally, I've gotten everything, not that it wasn't in place, but the guy that was running it from the hotel's perspective suddenly disappeared. And I was finally able to get a hold of a new person. We are all set for April 19th through April 21st. I just want to be there till the 25th. In Blue Ridge, I will send you all out very specific information once I get that. But I want you to be able to put that in your calendar. So April 19th through April 21st. We will do the board meeting on the 21st while we are there. It'll be open to the public there on location, since we won't have the avenue to YouTube it. And Katie is up, she has agreed, Katie Grepper, thankfully has agreed to talk on her part with the prosecuting attorneys. And then Robbie with polygraph examination will be presenting on polygraph examinations. So that's Thursday. On Friday, when we do the board meeting, we'll also do at that time, I always do the budget report and kind of my recommendations and updating you all kind of where we're at on numbers. So we'll do that on Friday. The other thing is just the 2023 calendar. We do need to go over that. We do need to vote because I have to put it into our system. We do know that there's no board meeting in December. The evaluators have started training on the Dragon Pro, and hopefully that's going to be helpful to them. So fingers crossed on that. They have been diligently working on that piece. And then we will have the meeting. The first meeting would be in January. And so I've sent you all the calendar based on what we currently do, which is the second Thursday of every month at 10 o'clock. And I didn't really see any holidays or anything to interrupt that. The only change would be in April when we have the retreat and having the board meeting on the 21st, which would be the third Friday, which is a little different out of the norm. So other than that, everything is pretty much typical. But you do have to vote on that if everybody's good with the calendar.
Okay, any questions on the 2023 calendar? Do I hear a motion we accept the 2023 calendar?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of accepting the 2023 calendar for SOAR, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The calendar has been accepted.
And for the public, we will be posting that calendar since it's been approved today. We'll go ahead and get into the website today, hopefully. So that'll be all set.
Okay.
And then the next thing is just with that being approved, the next meeting will be January 12th at 10 a.m. And that's it for me.
All right, so let's move on to our case list now. I counted, I think it was 135 cases or so that we all reviewed this month. And I just want to thank the investigators and the staff for their hard work in getting this. There was a lot of cases that were court-ordered cases that we got to. And so just really appreciate all the hard work this month. And I know everybody had a lot of case reviews to do. So we're going to move now to the level 1 cases. Are there any discussion on the level 1 cases?
Yes, I would like to discuss 27481. This is Katie Gropper.
What was the number again?
27481.
It's number 59 on the case list.
Tell me when you're ready.
Okay,
So my concern with this one specifically being a level 1 is a major risk reducing factor on his static testing was his age, because he's 73, but his offenses occurred when he was 69 and 70 years old. So I don't think that his age being a risk reducing factor is that compelling to me. He has 3 unrelated victims. He has only been free in the community for 6 months and he has not completed sex offender treatment. So I feel very uncomfortable about leveling him a level 1, considering he committed these offenses very recently. He's barely been free in the community, and he has not done any sex offender treatment. So I think the static numbers are deceiving when you take into consideration his age at the time of offense. So that's my input.
any other comments?
Frank, on that, on 22,985,
Good point.
I'm sorry,
We're still on.
we're still on 59, Sheriff.
okay, go ahead.
We'll
Okay,
come to you
Gotcha.
next.
okay.
So, Tracy, do we want to send this back to staffing?
It depends on y'all. You can vote as is with Katie not agreeing with the level, so she would be against the level 1. Or we can poll it if the board prefer we poll it, and then the evaluator can staff it with the other evaluators. I can share the concern and they can have a discussion about it and see if it should change based on the entire evaluators reviewing it versus just one evaluator reviewing it.
I like that. I like that second option.
I agree with that as well.
Yeah, I agree with Katie's concerns, and I think that pulling it is the right thing to do and revisiting it.
Was that one of the court orders? Not one of the court orders.
I wouldn't know,
Okay.
but it's okay if it is, because I can let the
Okay.
judge know.
Okay. All right. So we're going to vote to pull that case now. Is that correct, Tracy? So I'm assuming we've got a second there, a first and a second there. All in favor of pulling this case for further review by staffing, do so by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. That case will be pulled and staffed and brought back to us in January.
So what I'll do is have them review it, and then when we put it back on the case list for January, I will write down in it, and you'll see kind of where I put recusals under the case number, I'll put resubmitted. So y'all will know that that's the case, because if they stay with the level 1 and then y'all, depending on what you decide, then you'd pull it for the committee. Or if it changes to a level 2, you'll know that that was the case that was changed. And so that will kind of help give you some guidance with that.
Okay, Sheriff Brown.
Yes, I'm sorry about earlier. 22,985, 22-985. I need to recuse myself from that case. That's out of my office.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Sheriff, for that.
Okay, all right.
That's a good memory.
Definitely.
All right, any other discussions on any of the 81 level 1 cases? Do I hear a motion that we now vote on the cases?
So move.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
All right, can I get a roll call, please?
Was that Bert?
That was
that was
first.
me, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we are removing case number 27481. So that brings us down to 80 level 1 cases.
Okay, and I'm sorry, are there any other recusals? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 recusals.
Are there any recusals other than what's written on the case list?
I think Matthew is the other recusal.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
for you,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all I,
That's
yeah,
it.
that's all I
Okay.
recognize.
And then is there any, I don't think there's any Matthews on. Oh, yeah,
There's one
Matt,
Matthew.
is there any other recusal other than the one I have listed for you? Just for the level 1s?
No, that's it.
No, okay. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and vote on those 80 cases. Mindy,
My vote is aye.
Gerard,
Aye.
Sheriff Brown, other than your 1 recusal,
Aye.
Jerry,
I'm back.
so we're voting on the level 1 cases.
Sorry, I just got kicked off again.
That's okay. We're voting on 80 level 1 cases.
Yes, I was hearing the discussion about the first case you were discussing when I got kicked off.
So that what we decided was to pull that case, and the entire staff of evaluators will review it, and then we'll re-present it to the board in January.
Great, thank you.
And then for the other 80 cases, what is your vote?
Aye.
Matthew, other than your recusal?
Aye.
Katie,
Aye.
Caitlin,
Aye.
Frank, other than your recusals?
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
Lori? Lori,
Aye.
they pass.
All right, thank you. All right, now we move on to the 38 level 2 cases. There any discussion on the level 2 cases? Do I hear a motion that we vote to review the level 2 cases?
So move.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, Tracy, can I have a roll call, please?
Okay, Mindy,
Aye.
Gerard,
Aye.
Sheriff Brown,
Aye.
Jerry,
Aye.
Matthew, other than the 1 recusal that I see for you,
Aye.
Katie,
Aye.
Caitlin,
Aye.
Frank, other than the 3 recusals that I see for you,
Aye.
Bert,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
they pass.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to move on to our sexually dangerous predator cases. There is 6 of those. Are there any questions about the sexually dangerous predator cases?
Yeah, this is Bert. So the last meeting in September, I had requested that we pull 22-698, which I think is it should be the first case in your sexually dangerous predator.
It's the 3rd.
The 3rd, okay. There was a the classification came from a case in Wisconsin where the information indicated that there was a not guilty. And so there was a really good supplemental work done in the report on follow-up on that. And, it's interesting. I mean, the person was undoubtedly found not guilty, and from the report, it looks like that contact was made with the prosecutor of the case. It essentially said that the credibility of the victim and witnesses were called into question because there had, I guess, been continued contact between them while everything was pending. And then also the person's prior history, which is certainly significant and dates back to the 90s and 80s, was not, in Georgia, we obviously call them similar transactions. I don't know what they call them in Wisconsin and what their process is, but that those incidents were not part of that trial. And so the prosecutor, I think, pointed to those things as reasons why the jury found him not guilty. It's an interesting case because the allegations were very detailed initially, and so, but nonetheless, the jury spoke, and that was what their verdict was, which on one hand would, gives me a little pause, but then on the other hand, I think that what the supplemental reports were able to show was that there are numerous other victims that of very similar fact pattern wise, very similar conduct that they uncovered or spoke to or learned about, which I think to me makes me comfortable, at least I'm comfortable with the classification here. I have a little pause with the not guilty, and then, using that to sustain this classification. The allegations or the words of, or the documentation of other victims, I think clearly demonstrate that this is the correct classification. I don't have any idea why or if these new allegations are going to be pursued and potentially indicted. Obviously none of us can speak to law enforcement in Wisconsin on why they would not, if they learned of further allegations that are so similar, why they would not pursue charges there. I don't know what the statute of limitations is in Wisconsin. I don't know anything about Wisconsin law, but the allegations are rise to a very egregious level. And so I don't know why they wouldn't pursue another case against this individual based on that information. I say all that to say I've kind of gone around the circle on this, and based on everything, I am comfortable with the classification of sexually dangerous predator. But I do think it's important to discuss the kind of all the factors. And I mean, there are some things that I think support it, other things that call it to question. But I think in the end, I am comfortable with this classification.
If I'm not mistaken, charges are also on the static, so they don't have to be convicted. Just a charge increases risk as well, according to the static score. So it doesn't have to be a conviction. It's just charges itself have been shown to increase.
And the lawyer, I think for me, I look at this through the legal lens more than the evaluation lens. I can't help but do that. And so I understand that it is absolutely that the allegations are part of the static discussion. I think for me, maybe if anything else, if this person doesn't get charged for these things, I think I'll be disappointed. But either way, that's not our fight, and that's not our jurisdiction. But because they really do sound, I mean, to talk about pattern, there is just a tremendous amount of similarity between the allegations and the underlying offense, which he was found not guilty of. But regardless, I'm comfortable with this.
I think that's the beauty of the board, is there's a lot of different input from everybody. So I appreciate you, Bert, especially your diligence in that. So thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments about the 6 sexually dangerous predator cases? Any other recusals? All right. Do I hear a motion that we vote on the 6 sexually dangerous predator cases?
So moved.
Second.
I hear a second. There's a second.
Is that
Okay.
Jerry? Or Bert, I'm
That was
sorry.
that you, Bert? Okay, go. Tracy, we'll get a roll call, please.
Okay, Mindy,
My vote is aye.
Gerard,
Aye.
Sheriff Brown,
Aye.
Jerry,
Aye.
Matthew,
Aye.
Katie,
Aye.
Caitlin,
Aye.
Frank, other than your 3 recusals,
Aye.
Bert,
My vote is aye.
Lori,
Aye.
they pass.
All right, thank you. And now we'll look at the 5 reevaluation cases. I see 1 recusal. Are there any other recusals? Any discussion?
I have discussion. Hang on. We're in reevals, right?
Yes.
So my discussion is on 20216. And it's not, let me make sure this is the right one. You know, it's not substantial, and I'm trying to think of how to word this. The person was classified as a level 2. The reeval came back as a level 2. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I read this report and this evaluation, and I wonder what the difference is between a level 2 and a level 1 on it. I think that there is, and again, I understand that the way that these things are scored, is a lot of what leads to the recommendations here. But I'll be honest with you, and I'm not defending the conduct in the person of this case by any stretch of the imagination. But I feel like we have a lot of level 1 classifications that are just frankly more egregious than this person who is at a level 2. And I don't know if that means that some of these level 1 classifications are off, but we have level 1 classifications that deal with actual, physical allegations. This person's allegation was not, there's not a human victim or, physically. And while there's definitely a pattern of conduct that goes on for, looks like a lot of this person's life, and clearly there was, polygraph, this person, didn't do well on the polygraph on that one particular question several times. And in the most recent polygraph, for some reason, doesn't ask that question. So I can understand and see that, but I read the evaluation as a whole, and to me, I just wonder why is this a level 2 and not a level 1 in the first place? And I don't. Maybe it's the right classification, but and maybe it's wrong for me to try to compare. When we read the bulk and the body of these evaluations, I just feel like I get a sense for level 1 and level 2. And this case could just as easily be a level 1 as it is a level 2. And so part of me, it just kind of wonders why we're on a level 2 with this person. And if there's a reason, I want to hear that. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that we change it. I just think it really raised a question for me. And maybe it's a broader question. Maybe it's a question that's bigger than just this one case. But I think that it'll be 9 years in March since this person's underlying conduct that led to their arrest. They have no other criminal history other than the case at hand. And so I would like someone to explain to me why this is level 2 and not level 1.
Can I ask you a question really quick? Bert, what were the scores on the risk assessments?
It didn't include them.
It was a CP case of images.
Okay, I gotcha.
So it would be a C-port.
Gotcha, which we can't do.
You also finished the active phase of treatment, which I thought that would count towards.
I thought it indicated in there that he continued to engage in offending behavior or fantasies even after completing treatment.
No, I think, well, maybe I'm wrong. I think what it said was that he had a physiological response on the polygraph to that question. And then, so he had a physiological response a couple of times on some polygraphs. And then in the most recent polygraph, that particular question wasn't asked. And obviously, we don't know why it wasn't asked, but I don't think that there were admissions or proof that there were continued engagement. Let's see.
No, it was just a physiological response. So then,
And so I feel like, I recognize the science behind that, and I'm not doubting it, but I just, to me, this case, when I look at the bulk of cases, I feel like this case seems like a level 1 case to me, having almost 9 years passed and whatnot. And on the one hand, it almost, I get it. It feels like if there were to be a reduction from level 2 to level 1, then it seems to reward a petition to do so where the kind of key question wasn't asked. And so, like, I understand the optics around that, but to me, the underlying cases itself could very easily be a level 1, and I don't know that anybody on the board would object to that. I don't know. I can only speak for myself, but just looking at these cases and comparing them to others. So I don't know if that makes much sense to anybody, but those were my thoughts on that.
Well, to Bert's point, like comparing this one to the level 1 that I took issue with, like, I'm much more concerned by that level 1 than this individual. So, I mean, your point is noted that I agree with you that there are a lot of individuals classified as level 1 that appear more of a risk than this one.
So I think that this is a good example of why I'm trying to move for 5 levels instead of 3, because when you think about it, you're talking about a really you could have somebody who's a really low level 1 and a high level 1 and a low level 2 and a high level 2 and so on and so forth. And also I'd have to pull this case to look at it, but I can tell you that clinically, when we look at sexual reoffense, if somebody is actively engaging in fantasy of children, which I'm guessing that's what the polygraph is implying from what you're saying, to not be desisting. So we look at those who have intrusive deviant thoughts and they're able to battle those successfully, and those who actively fantasize about children and are not battling that successfully. That active fantasy increases their risk for reoffense. And that's just what I'm hearing you say with those polygraphs. Maybe the reason for the concern with the last polygraph is not really addressing to make sure that he's desisting from his deviancy.
And I don't think any of us, I asked this rhetorically because I don't think any of us know the answer to this, but why did this person, how were they able to fashion the polygraph where it didn't ask the doggone most important question that we would want to know? Was the offender or his attorney able to convince the person doing the polygraph to not do that, or was it was it an oversight? Like, how does that happen? I don't have a whole lot of insight on polygraphs in this context. Can a lawyer rig a polygraph where a question's not asked?
This is probably a probation polygraph.
Well,
correct?
it could be either or. So
Yeah.
depending, since it's a reevaluation, it could be from the attorney, it could be the offender seeking out the polygraph on his own, or it could be through treatment. And there could be a variety of reasons why that question was not asked, which could include the examiner didn't ask it like they should have. It could have been the treatment provider had specific things they wanted to know at the time and didn't include that. It could be if it was a defense attorney helping him out, saying, let's not just look at that question. I mean, it could be a multitude of reasons, unfortunately.
Is it possible to, I think that the report that we have on this, is very detailed and gives a lot of information, but is it possible that from reading the polygraph, if there was, again, I don't know how many questions this person was asked. I don't know how many questions they were asked that kind of got into the area that's close in subject matter to the magic question that clearly wasn't asked. Did the person show any physiological responses to anything? Was there any indication? I don't, and so I think part of me wants to say this person seems to be deserving of a level 1 classification. But why are we considering this without the magic question? I don't necessarily want to disqualify my thought process here because he wasn't asked, because maybe it wasn't his fault that he wasn't asked, but.
Well, I can say this, it does, Tracy may agree or disagree, but non-hands-on offenders tend to be more compulsive and fantasy driven a lot of times than hands-on offenders, if I'm not mistaken on that.
Yeah.
And so that may be one of the reasons, considering the risk of level 2 being tends to be more compulsive, especially if there was a polygraph in the past that said he was still having fantasies. That's probably what leaned toward the level 2, is just the compulsive nature of hands-off offenders. That's just my kind of speculation on it.
How extraordinary is it for this board to ask this person to go through a polygraph and be asked the magic question that he's showed physiological responses on before, and then see what his so he's failed the question before, he wasn't asked this time. Is it extraordinary for us to ask him to undergo another polygraph to see what he does or doesn't do for that particular question? Is that extraordinary?
Well, I think it's beyond our scope, if I'm not mistaken, what we can do. Is that correct, Tracy?
I think it complicates things tremendously. I'm not sure. I'd have to refer to legal on that.
What is your say, Elizabeth?
I'm gonna have to go back and look at the actual statute that talks about the documentation. I know that there are provisions within the statute or the code that allow them to provide certain documents. And then I think there's also some provision in there whereby the board can actually request. I'm not sure that a polygraph is one of them, like a psychosex eval I know is one. I don't specifically recall a polygraph being one of them.
Is PPG one of them?
I think only the psychosexual.
It's just the psychosexual.
I believe that off the top of my head, that's the one that comes to mind. The only other thing I would say is that in terms of timing, I'm not sure that would fall into any of the code provisions currently, where the time limits are kind of very set out in the code, and when things have to be done and as part of what portion of the process they need to be done. So I would caution against stepping outside those time limits and setting some sort of standard for doing that going forward.
Do we know if this person's still on probation or parole? If
We can pull it.
we can pull the case and go back and see if if he's on probation or parole, he's probably still had in treatment.
He got a
probably-
15-year sentence in 2014, so I would imagine
Right.
unless
So,
it's been terminated.
If he's in treatment, he's going to be required to take a polygraph every 6 months. So we could pull it and then see if there's another polygraph that we could look at or review, or whatever the board so chooses to do, is we could pull it and then come back to it.
If that's a possibility, I like that. Because again, I don't want to reward anybody for being able to be crafty and manipulate, the process. I don't think someone should be rewarded for that. On the other hand, I look at this case as a whole and say, if it was a category 1 a level 1 from the beginning, I don't think it would stand out to me. And so, I understand the tension of my pull on this is that, to me, this case, if I read it as a level 1, it would fit right in my mind with a lot of level 1s, at least the way that I see them.
Well, I guess the other question is, he's already been deemed a level 2 previously by the board, so there was no argumentation on that previously. And if it's been 9 years, another year more than likely may reduce risk, if I'm not correct. Is that correct, at the 10-year mark?
Well, they have to wait 10 years post classification.
Post classification, okay.
So what we could do is we could pull the reevaluation, and a couple things can happen is one, we can see if he's had been polygraphed with that question in that polygraph examination, and two, I could have the reevaluation to give more explanation as to the evaluator's perspective on why this individual is a level 2, if it doesn't seem clear within the evaluation.
I think that would be helpful. And, you know, if there's any context to the polygraph where there were other questions that are kind of tangentially related to or similar to this, that where there was some kind of, you know, signal in the test that raises eyebrows, I think it would be good to know as well. And again, there are some things I can talk about and I know what I'm talking about. This is something that I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know how the administration of polygraphs happen and all that kind of stuff. So I think it would be very helpful if we
Hopefully
could.
we'll know more after our training about polygraphs coming up in April, right?
I look forward to that.
All right, any other discussion on the reevals? Okay, do I hear a motion that we vote on the 5 reeval cases, or 4 reeval cases?
So moved.
I hear
Second.
a second. There's a second,
Seconded it.
Bert second. Tracy, we do a roll call?
Okay, any questions or concerns by any of the reevals, Mindy?
No questions or concerns. My vote is aye.
Any questions or concerns about the reevals, Chard?
No question.
Sheriff Brown, any questions or concerns by any of the reevals? Sheriff Brown?
No questions. My vote is aye. Sorry.
Jerry, any questions or concerns by any of the reevals?
No, and my vote is aye.
Matthew, any questions or concerns about the reevals other than your one recusal?
No, my vote is aye.
Katie, any questions or concerns by any of the reevals?
No, aye.
Caitlin, any questions or concerns by any of the reevals?
No, my vote is aye.
Frank, you don't have any recusals.
I don't have any recusals.
Any questions or concerns by any of the reevals?
No, and my vote is aye.
Bert, any questions or concerns about any of the reevals?
No, my vote is aye.
And Lori, any questions or concerns by any of the reevals?
No, my vote is aye.
So the 4 pass with our removal of 20216 for further review.
All right, is there any other comments or questions from the board? Wish everyone happy holidays coming up, and before we go,
We do need the board to stay
Board to
on, but
stay
we
on.
need to disconnect from public taping.